Hey guys, welcome back. In today's relationship story, my awful mother-in-law forged my signature to take out a second mortgage to pay for her gambling addiction. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the story. After living with my wife in an apartment that was too small for 3 years, we saved enough money and kept our credit good enough for a down payment and mortgage on a house. Like many people, I don't exactly like my in-laws, but unlike most people, my mother-in-law actually is a horrible human being. Don't believe me? We almost had to stop her from coming to the wedding because she started telling the venue things to do that we didn't want. Changing table arrangements, trying to hire the DJ she wanted, and going as far as to try and force my wife into the dress she wanted instead of what my wife wanted. And she was not paying for any of this, by the way. She was just being entitled and thinking she was the center of the universe. Maybe I'll talk more about that story another time. Anyway, I got a letter in the mail from the bank that handles our mortgage. A little weird because I have the bills being paid electronically, but this said bill right on it. I open and see a bill payment for a loan taken out against the house. A second mortgage basically, and when I asked my wife, she was also clueless about it. I called, but that was a wasted 3 hours of my time, and instead I was told to go down and speak to somebody at the bank. When I got there, I was being led around and had to wait more, so I was frustrated and 4 hours and roughly into an issue with no answers. Finally, the manager came over and showed me a copy of a form that had my name on it. Not exactly my signature, because it's not even close to how I signed my name, then next to it the signature of my mother-in-law. The form was basically putting her on the mortgage/deed to the house. I was told that if my wife or I did not take out the second mortgage, the only other person that could have was my mother-in-law. I told them I never signed that and wanted to see the loan they took out. They said I needed a court order to see the paperwork or get her name off anything. I understand the legal barriers are in place to protect people, but in that moment I hated them. I now had to drive to my mother-in-law's house and speak to her about everything. She opened the door after I knocked for a good 5 minutes straight, probably looking crazy to any neighbors. Me, do you want to explain why I just heard from the bank that your name is on our deed? Mother-in-law, oh that? I just wanted to be able to protect you in case something happened. Me, and does that include taking out a second mortgage on the house? Don't even think about lying, I know you did it. Mother-in-law, I'm not trying to hide anything. I took out a teeny tiny loan. You would think that a good son-in-law would want me to be able to survive. You can think of it as a gift. Me, how much did you take out? I want to see the papers. Mother-in-law, just a little bit. I don't know where the paperwork is. You don't need to get so angry about it. Me, I do, because I don't want my house foreclosed on if I don't know how much money you took out. This went back and forth a while, but I eventually got her to tell me how much was in her small loan. It was the maximum amount for $250,000. She really expected me to be able to pay for that when we were just scraping by as it is. We would 100% lose the house if we couldn't get that money back and repay the bank. My mother-in-law just did not care and kept saying that it was not a big deal. I filed a police report that very same day for her forgery, fraud and theft by deception. An investigation was started and we would get a day in court to show our side of things to a jury to get mother-in-law persecuted. My wife was not thrilled that we were pressing charges against her mother, but she was on my side. Nothing else really happened until she was given a court date and we went to sit and watch things unfold. Plus, of course, give our testimony when needed. The court used a forensic specialist that could detect handwriting in order to show that it could not have been me that signed the forms. They suspect she brought another man with her to the bank, but nobody could figure out who, and she was not saying anything. I think months down the line she admitted to finding a homeless guy and paying him to sign my name on the forms, which I think is extremely scummy to drag a desperate person into a criminal act. During the court proceedings it was also found where the money went. Since it was clear that she got it under theft, it should be returned to the bank. Well, that did not happen though, because it was gone. All of it. She had emptied $250,000 before I filed a report and had her assets frozen. What I didn't know was how advanced some of our modern-day technology actually is. They were able to see not only her withdrawing large amounts from ATMs, but where those ATMs actually were. All of them were inside casinos where she obviously gambled and lost the entire loan. I knew that she had a gambling addiction in the past, but in the years I knew her, I had never seen it. All of it was just wasted away, and now the loan against my house had no money left to give back. They also found out this was not the first time she was found forging documents or stealing money in order to feed this gambling habit. It was just the first time it was large enough to be a felony. By the time it was her turn on the stand, things were pretty much decided. But legally, she was allowed to speak. Instead of excuses, she just went on an absolute rant saying that the entire thing was everybody else's fault and I was a horrible son-in-law. That she did not take any of that money and I was happy to let her be on the deed and take out a loan. I was just mad because she did not hit a jackpot. Any credit she may have had was gone, and it would have been better if she didn't say anything to the jury. She was found guilty on all 3 accounts and the judge gave her a harsh sentence. 2 years in prison without parole. The only thing left is the fact that the loan was taken out. Now, the bank with the forgery information was able to take her name off, but that didn't stop them from wanting their money. They had the loan against the house, and until we could figure out how to get it from mother-in-law's assets, we were stuck paying. It turns out we had 2 months unpaid because mother-in-law was stealing those bills at first. My credit tanked, and now the only thing I can do is try to fix it and put this nightmare behind me. Edit: some of you were commenting to get a restraining order against mother-in-law for when she gets out of prison, and we will do that. It's good for 5 years and we can always get a new one after that. Also, people were asking about her house, and yes, it is being seized and sold to pay off the bank debt. I just paid in the meantime, so my credit didn't even get worse or if they foreclosed. Error on the side of caution. And the next one is an Am I the A-hole story. My 30 female husband's ex-girlfriend, 33 female, was recently diagnosed with late-stage breast cancer, and her last wish is to be with my husband, 35 male. So my husband, let's call him Seb, and his ex Tanya became best friends after their breakup a couple of years ago due to her infidelity. They were together for 5 years, and needless to say, they remain in contact even before he met me. I would be lying if I say it never made me feel uncomfortable, even once. It did, and it still does, because Tanya is still in love with my husband. She never denied it and in fact would even call or message me when she cannot get a hold of Seb. Aside from cancer, she also has some mental health issues, and thus my husband would always tell me to be kind and patient. Seb is no longer in love with her, of course. She cheated and Seb swore that he will never get back to her and that he only sees her as family. 2 weeks ago, my husband received a call from Tanya to tell him about the sad news. My husband cried with her and told her everything is gonna be okay. They were on the phone the whole day. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that Seb and I moved to Australia a few months ago because of my job, and Tanya is in Canada. They mostly talk via long-distance calls or WhatsApp, and they've been in contact almost every day since we left, which always bothers me, but what can I do? After that call, my husband told me everything, and to be honest, I felt bad for her and I genuinely felt sad. I asked him what's gonna happen now, and Seb told me he's going back to Canada. Which is a shock. He then told me that her last wish is to be with him. I didn't say anything except, what about me? He said if I cannot leave my job, then he's gonna visit me whenever he gets the chance. I walked out without saying anything. I've been avoiding my husband since the phone call and have been ignoring him whenever he tries to bring up the conversation. Yesterday, I found out he already bought a ticket and is flying back home in January. I feel like he is abandoning me, but at the same time, I feel that I'm selfish for hating both of them. I'm honestly thinking of getting a divorce because obviously he is choosing her over me, but at the same time, I thought of why my husband is so attached to her. Seb considered Tanya and her family like his own, as he doesn't have one. She is probably like a sister to him now. But Tanya does not feel the same. She's just madly in love, my husband, and him granting her wish will surely make her think they still have a chance. My entire life I've been putting others first. I have been very patient and understanding about their weird relationship. However, now I feel sick, confused. I want to call her, yell at her for ruining my marriage, for trying to steal my husband from me. For using her sickness to get what she wants, for being a bee. I'm so mad at both of them. What did I do to deserve this? And yeah, ripe stars, let me know in the comments what you think about this. Do you think OP is being the a-hole here or not? I would say clearly not, because nobody deserves to be in a relationship like this. I feel so bad for OP. Anyway, the first comment said, I'm sorry that happens to you, and to be honest, he has shown you who his priority is now. I understand that Tanya is dying, but deciding that he will leave and come visit you, his wife, while taking care of his cheating ex-girlfriend in a different country? That's too much for me, not to mention he bought the plane tickets without discussing it with you. Sure, you have ignored him, but his decision to go back without talking it out with you is the cause of this problem. Who in their right mind would ask a married man to care for her just because she's dying? By the way, I noticed that you said Tanya is his only family, but you are his family too. Comment number 2, you know what's especially gross? Your husband was carrying on with his ex all these years knowing that ex was in love with him. He valued her love for him, they were having an emotional affair. That is why it was so easy for him to abandon OP, his feelings for his ex were always there, and now that emotional affair is about to become physical. Disgusting to all ends. OP, you need to be strong and not a doormat. If they want each other that bad, then step aside and don't let them trample your heart. Leave on your terms and don't let them be the ones to dictate your heartbreak. And now an update with an additional comment from OP. So thank you all for your comments and messages. I didn't expect my post to get this much attention, all I wanted is to get this off my chest so I can focus on work and other things. I've been a mess and being in another country with no one, only my husband, is making my situation worse. While some people think that Tanya might be lying about her condition, unfortunately she's not. She was originally diagnosed a couple of years ago and has been on a treatment for it. Only recently she found out its progress and is now refusing further treatment. Sorry, I was not too clear about this. My husband said she is giving up. In fact, she wanted to give up a long time ago, but her family, including my husband, wanted her to fight. He is now going back to Canada to be her support. As per her request, Seb did suggest that I go back home with him. But my job here in Australia is a dream come true for me and I cannot just abandon it, especially not for her. I know that divorce is the wise decision here, my husband obviously cannot let go of her and we cannot build a life together if he has a baggage. I love my husband so much to the point that I endure all of these through the years. Thinking of divorce makes me feel like I'm dying and I don't know if I will ever be ready of letting him go. I haven't talked to my husband yet, but I think he already knows what's gonna happen. I apologize for everyone who is asking for an update. As many have guessed, I'm not a good communicator, which is why the situation got this bad. I'm partially to blame for letting this happen to me and to us. By the way, I already contacted a lawyer to know the next step, and again, thank you for your comments and messages. It made me feel better. I feel horrible for wanting to stop a dying person's wish and for being mad with someone who's helpless, but you are all right. I should also think of myself. And now we got another update to the story, and it reads like this. First of all, I apologize for those who have been messaging me in the past year asking for an update. Basically, I was a mess after what happened and couldn't talk about it even to my family. I was reminded of this post because someone messaged me on this Reddit account today. It's been over a year and a lot has happened. I think I'm now ready to talk. So Seb did end up flying back to Canada January last year. Before he flew, we talked about the situation and I told him that I've been in contact with a divorce lawyer. He was surprised. He said he didn't expect me to leave him just because he needs to be with his family. I remember at the time all I felt was anger. I was so mad that he's making it sound like I'm the bad person here. Nevertheless, the conversation didn't end well. He left without any closure, but he said he'll be back in March. I was left alone. January to March last year was the darkest days of my life. I knew I did nothing wrong, but I ended up blaming myself for everything. I hate to admit, but I cancelled the meeting with my lawyer as I started to doubt if I really want to leave him or not. I love him so much to the point that I'm willing to accept him again when he is back. During the entire time he was gone, he rarely called to check on me. I had to call him most of the time. I know I'm dumb. I feel so alone and sad. I begged for his attention, to give me some of his time, to be with me again. All those time he kept telling me that Tanya needs him more. In March I was expecting him to come back so we can talk, but he didn't come back. He said he needs to stay more and promised he'll be back in May. I don't know what happened to me when I got that call from him in early March to tell me that he won't be flying back to Australia. At the time I felt like there's a switch that suddenly turned off because somehow I stopped caring. When he told me he won't be back until May, I knew I have to move forward without him. Fast forward to May, he was back and that day we sat down to talk. He broke down and said, "I cannot lose you too." But when he said that, I thought Tanya was gone. But no, she is not, and as far as I know, she is still alive to this day. I asked what happened and he told me that Tanya asked him to go back and be with me. He said that Tanya is sorry for everything. Seb did not want to leave her, especially when he saw how bad she was doing. They had a fight and according to him, Tanya wants him out of her alive. If I was the same dumb person, I would totally accept him back, but at that time, all I can think was, he is only back because Tanya doesn't want him anymore. I let him cry, I comforted him and let him stay in my apartment. A week after, I told him that I'm divorcing him, and at first he refused to leave. It was a long and painful process, but on my birthday in July, he finally realized that he couldn't manipulate me anymore, and by August he was back in Canada. The divorce is not finalized yet, but we have been separated since he left. He tried to contact me several times last year. Tanya also tried to contact me, and everyone including my family tried to convince me to give him a second chance. But that day in March, when I finally came back to my senses, I knew nothing can make me change my mind. As of now, I'm doing fine alone by myself. I got promoted last year and moved to a bigger apartment near the beach. I found new friends and recently got into Pilates, or Pilates, I forgot how to pronounce that, and I've traveled Australia and New Zealand and met some amazing people. I feel like a completely different person. Last year was the major turning point of my life. Seb still bothers me from time to time, but he knows that I couldn't care less anymore. Sometimes I talk to him, I still care but not as much, and I've been told by our common friends that he's not doing well. He became an alcoholic and couldn't get a job because of it. He's mostly couch surfing because Tanya doesn't want him to live with her. That bitch. Anyway, thank you Reddit for taking the time reading this and my post last year. Your advice means a lot to me. For those people who are in the same situation as me, please know that everything is going to be better. I thought I cannot get through this, and there are times that I thought of taking my own life. It was hard, but I promise you, it will be better. You'd be surprised how strong you are and how amazing life can be. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I'm really happy for OP that things turned out better in the end, and to be honest, I didn't really expect that. I kind of thought that the story would have ended in a way where OP did not really have a spine and let Seb trample all over her. I'm really happy that it turned out differently. And the next one is a malicious compliance story. And by the way, if you have enjoyed the story so far, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even post a comment, because that would help me tremendously. Thank you so much. So this one starts like this. I'm working for a pretty big company, lots of departments, lots of "we are the best" talk, and we really are. Core values are followed pretty well and major issues get dealt with quite well, apart from my boss, who we can call Gail. She is a micromanager to say the least, and a workaholic who expected you to do a lot but never outside of your normal shift, since she thought OT was the devil for us hourly workers. The first MC was Gail tasking me with this monthly report to hand up the chain to Mandy, who was a pretty big deal. The report was intensive and very in-depth, so it took a lot of unpaid overtime to learn and get it down. Gail did not appreciate it and questioned what I was doing as to why it was taking so long. More on this later, as learning something out of my scope was not too appropriate. Myself and Mandy got to know each other very well and developed a great working relationship, which certainly benefited me as much as it could. We were generations and countries apart, no romantics. Gail found out Mandy was asking me questions about my sites and for some reason didn't take too kindly and informed me that any and all communication from myself to Mandy must go through her, Gail, including this report. Thankfully, Gail has a company-wide reputation for being a bit cray-cray, so I could hear Mandy roll her eyes on the phone the first time Gail sent her the report rather than I. I had told Mandy that Gail knew very little about this report, especially the most important part, and 2 specific questions would likely have her forward those questions to me to answer. So of course those 2 very specific questions were brought up, but not by email, but rather on a big call of bigwigs, just as I happened to step out of the office and was unable to field quick questions from Gail over the computer. And the feedback was nothing but a roasting for Gail, as she had of course said the report was hers initially, and thus the report was taken away from Gail and I altogether. This upset Gail, so she hammered back why I didn't do other work while I was learning this report. 6+ months had passed and I had it down to an absolute science that took no time updating. And then asked me to begin logging everything I do every day. Due to other factors in this job, HR was already looped in on everything that was going on between Gail and I, so this was as well. As you can already guess, the long story short is this log was filled out to the minute after every task, phone call or anything I did, including time for filling out the log. The amount of detail I put in for this log, Gail wanted as much detail as possible, allowed for me to actually spend 2 to 3 minutes filling out this log for even the smallest task of a passerby of my office door, asking me a quick yes-no question. I absolutely loved it. This unfortunately did not allow me to complete all my normal tasks daily, and by the end of the first week I had quite the pile of additional work. Gail, myself, and HR got on a call to discuss all this after the week, and HR obviously sided with me and told Gail to either push work off me to someone else or get rid of this log that showed that I was skipping breaks. Good thing I wrote the log. These weekly calls also got myself a separate payment for an estimated but realistic amount of unpaid overtime due to the first paragraph and another project. Good guy HR. Despite HR making my life a lot easier, Gail did not, so I made the decision to switch departments entirely, zero carryover. Within 2 months of my switch, the entire department was functionalized with a few other departments due to creating a better balance of work to employee, changing the job scope of all my former colleagues entirely and coincidentally rendering Gail's job useless. She was pushed to a special projects role for a year where special projects then magically ended and she was let go. My new manager likes to send emails out to those under him who were promoted, and she was able to see 2 of those with my name on it and the second just days before her final one. And the next one is an Am I the A-hole story about a neighbor. I, female 28, recently moved into a new neighborhood. All my neighbors are lovely, especially my next door neighbor, bless his heart, wink wink. He is married and has 2 kids. I noticed that he's been looking towards my house for a while. So far, I had caught him doing it twice. He had his binoculars with him and was basically seemingly looking at my living room. I hate confrontation, so what I did was close the curtains and go about my day, but it started escalating. The other day, he was peeking at my backyard where I was sitting from his balcony and his binoculars fell in my backyard. I looked up and he was gone. He knew that I saw him. I took the binoculars and put them inside. In the evening, he came knocking on my door asking how I was done and whatnot. I rolled my eyes, but I kept it civil. He then brought up the binoculars and said that they must have fell in your backyard earlier today. I was like, wonder how that happened. He said something about his kids probably messing with them and asked if I could go get them for him. I said I have them, but I won't give them to him unless his wife comes and gets them herself. He looked at me shocked and angry and said that these binoculars are his and they are special because he has them from when he was in the military. And he also said that his wife has nothing to do with this. I told him that I will give them back once his wife shows up and asks for them. All he has to do is send her over. He threw a fit saying that he cannot send her because then she will misunderstand the situation. I told him there is no misunderstanding if it was really their kids that were using the binoculars and insisted that I won't give them back until his wife comes and gets them. We got into an argument, but he kept his voice as low as he could and then left looking furious. He has been complaining about me wanting to stir up drama and keeps demanding that I return his binoculars back to him and leave his wife out of it. Am I the a-hole? And yeah, Ripe Stars, let me know in the comments what you think about this. Do you think that OP is the a-hole here for not returning the binoculars or not? And yeah, I would say in this situation, it's pretty clear that the neighbor knows he did something wrong. That's why he does not want his wife to get involved. Also, that's a pretty genius move on the part of OP. Although I'm kind of curious what the law says about this. If someone drops some kind of item on your property, is it now technically yours or does it still belong to the other person? If you know, let me know in the comments. Either way, someone in the comments said, not the a-hole. Honestly, good for you for standing your ground on it. The whole situation is really creepy. Alternatively, to avoid potentially getting the police involved, you could wait until he's not home and then take them to the wife yourself. Comment number 2, not the a-hole, your neighbor is a creep. He knows he's doing something wrong and he's trying to get away with it. I'm sure other neighbors have noticed. If you see creepy neighbor's wife, see if you can talk to her. Get some cameras and close the curtains facing their house. If he's watching you in the yard again, snap a photo and call the cops. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I would also love to hear from you. If your neighbor was watching you with binoculars and potentially recording you, what would you do? Would you go to the police? Let us know in the comments. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.